Hello. Welcome, everyone. Welcome to the product stage. My name is Kayla Schneider, and I have the great fortune of leading our enablement and solutions engineering team here. I am joined by my lovely colleague, Lisbeth Fernandez. Lisbeth, do you want to give a little intro?
Yeah, hi everybody. I'm Lisbeth. I'm one of the solutions engineers as well here at Virtuous. So I have the pleasure of talking to nonprofits every single day and just talking about Virtuous and how I can help them with their day-to-day fundraising. So happy to be here. Before coming to Virtuous, I spent 16 years in the world of nonprofits myself. So worked on that services side, on that kind of database reporting, overseeing the database, making sure we had coding up to date, running audits. So really happy to be here today to talk about data cleanliness and making sure that you're keeping your data clean, how to make that easy for you. So
I will say this is definitely one of my very favorite things to talk about. And how do we do this? How do we make your life easier through Virtuous? What are some of the small things that maybe we can put into place to, give your team back time, right? I've said this 1,000 times in the last 4 weeks, but ever since I've heard it, it's like part of my soul now. One of our clients told us, and our customers told us, Virtuous does the menial work, so I can do the meaningful work. And I think that's a big part of what this is about. How do we keep your data clean? What are some of the things that we can do to take that time off of your shoulders and allow you to be more strategic, to allow you to actually, maybe actually get on the phone and talk to a donor and thank them for a call, right? What are some of the things that we can do? And so just really excited to have Lisbeth kind of walk us through that and what that looks like here in Virtuous. So I see some of you are already putting where you're at, what that means. So please feel free to use the chat. I'm so excited. Amy, I heart clean data too. Yes, clean data is the best. It's the only way to go. So really excited to see what this looks like. Please feel free to put questions in the chat. Please feel free to ask them. I will answer them. If needed, I'll pass them over to Lisbeth and we'll get those going. But just really excited to hop in. So let's do it, Lisbeth.
Yeah, so I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Always a fun task to do that. All right. So here we go. It's loading. All right, so now you can see my Virtuous screen, right? So gonna start kind of by talking about our contact records and kind of what they look like, and then move into more like how you can, make sure that you're not creating duplicates, cleaning up duplicates if you have that, and how to kind of automate some of your cleanup process as well. So starting off here with our contact records, right? This is really the building block for all of your fundraising, right? Where you're gonna be tracking all that important data of who is this contact, right? How are they related to the organization? Do you have contact methods for them? Do you have a way of mailing out to them? Do you have a way of emailing them? All that kind of data is housed in our contact records here. So in Virtuous, we have a pretty robust system here for you to track a lot of data that you need, right? When you first come into a record at the top, you're gonna get just some pretty quick information on the record. I can quickly see their kind of primary address, their primary contact information here. I can see information related to their giving. But throughout the record, again, you have a lot of opportunities to track that information, right? So again, making it easy for you to have the information that you need to be able to communicate with your donors, right? So things like addresses, right? You can track multiple addresses in Virtuous, not only things even like a vacation home, right? You can track things like the dates that they're there. So if you have any snowbirds or people who are kind of, sharing, their time across different locations, you can track those addresses here and actually track the dates, and the system will actually auto kind of populate that address based on those dates there for you. So an easy way for you to know where people are and where you can reach them. You also can track all of their contact information. So one of the things in Virtuous is that we do have 3 main contact types. Those are organizations, foundations, and then households, right? So in my example record here, you're seeing a record for Ken and Lisa Moore. That's its own record with their own ID number. So I can track information like addresses, right? That's something that would sit at that contact level. But then you also have records for Ken and for Lisa, right? With their own ID numbers. So I can then track information individually to Ken and to Lisa, right? I want to know what Ken's email is. I can track multiple emails for Ken, multiple phone numbers for Ken, along with Lisa as well. So giving you a lot of flexibility to track data in the way that you need. And speaking of that flexibility, not only do we have a lot of those fields in the system already for you to track those important details, but you also have the ability to create custom fields, right? So if you wanted to know someone's like veteran status, for example, you can track that individually here for Lisa. You're creating those custom fields across any of the different objects in the system. So again, you can really make this flexible and actionable for you because you can have everything living in one place. You don't need to start tracking things in an Excel spreadsheet or in a different system, or have a shadow system for certain things. All the information related to this contact can live in Virtuous, right? Another way that you can kind of track and kind of keep your information clean and accurate is with our tags, right? So tags are the way that we do segmentation in Virtuous, essentially, again, allowing us to know who is this contact, right? How are they related to the organization? Are they one of your donors? Do they have any interests that you want to be able to track, right? Things like communication preferences. I can track all those as tags if I want, someone who prefers phone conversation over email or mail, or they don't want to receive any direct mail. You can track all that information here on the tags. Also track things like, their donor status, right? Are they a major donor? Are they one of your annual donors? Are they part of any of your giving societies? You can actually have all this information tracked here to, again, allow you to really speak more personally to these donors, right? What are they interested in? They're interested in youth development. Maybe I want to have a whole donor journey around something youth focused and make sure that they're receiving those communications, right? So essentially allowing you to make those connections because you're able to define easily who they are. And we're actually going to go into that automation piece in a little bit, but essentially these tags, you can add them right here from the query, from the record, but you also can add them in a variety of ways within Virtuous, right? You can add them through query, kind of in a bulk action there. So you can add it to a lot of records at a time, but you could even add them through automations, right? So imagine this like major donor tag, right? Maybe you have an automation running in the background whenever a donor is hitting a certain giving threshold, right? Maybe for your organization, that's $25,000, right? For that major donor level there. Have the system look for those people who are hitting those records there, those thresholds, right? And then have the system automatically add that major donor tag. So that way it can be a completely hands-off process, making it easy for you to do that. I love how Kayla mentioned kind of doing that menial work. Let the system do the menial work, right? Instead of you having to build queries to find people who are meeting any of these thresholds, have the system actually do all that kind of addition for you. So another really easy way for you to do that segmentation, allowing you to have a little bit more information about who they are, but making it easy for you to do that tagging for you. Something else that we're adding to the records is our wealth data. So again, we're making not only are you adding data to make your records rich with data, we're also adding that information for you through our native integration here. So we have a native integration with Donor Search that allows wealth data to actually be automatically appended here to records. Like you could actually have it added to all new records, or you could have it added just to your new donors, for example. So you're really setting up those rules. But again, this is a full screening that's coming over from Donor Search. It's not that preliminary screening. You can see not only like their donor rating, which kind of combines their wealth information with their propensity to give, but also you can see things like giving capacity ranges, their total charitable giving, any real estate values. And then if I click on this view all wealth data, a lot more information here that you can see, right? So you can see things like annual fund likelihood scores, right? Maybe you're doing a direct mail piece and you have too many people in your database, right? You need to pare down that list. You can use this information to help you actually isolate who might be a better candidate for giving in that annual fund program, right? So you can use that to help you kind of refine that list a little bit. Same thing with major gift likelihood and planned gift likelihood. That's all included in the screening here. And every field that you're seeing here through our wealth data can be queried on, right? So you actually can use this information to do some prospecting and do all that through automations as well. Like actually have the system do some of that data mining and have that information pushed over into your gift officer records, for example. Here on the right, one thing I just kind of want to point out kind of lastly on our contact record here is our activity feed, right? So essentially here is exactly what it sounds like, an activity feed of anything happening with this record, right? So I can see that they are opening emails, that they received an email, right? That they made a gift. So if you're working with this donor, right, you're not necessarily needing to go looking for information across different tabs. If you just want to know if they made a gift, I can actually adjust that view and actually get that information here, including information around audits, right? So I can see through here, if I uncheck, there's a whole bunch of things you can uncheck here. But again, you can see you can customize that view pretty easily, but there's actually that audit log here. So if I isolate that down, I can see who's made changes to this record, who updated a phone number. So giving you that full transparency for this record kind of on that main screen. So as you're working to clean up data and make sure that it's accurate, you kind of know what that history has been on that record there. So that was a brief little introduction into our contact record. Let's move more into how data actually makes it into Virtuous, right? So again, data is that key piece for your fundraising, right? That building block on kind of what everything is built on, right? So allowing you to actually be more successful with your fundraising, right? Have more people support your mission. In order to do that, you need to have clean data, right? So in Virtuous, we do take a proactive approach when it comes to data health, right? So everything that comes into Virtuous is going to come through our gift and contact import tool, right? Kind of like customs at the airport, that checkpoint to make sure that everything is coming in correctly before it actually makes it over, right? So I know it has that word import there, but it does a lot more than just importing. So obviously you can import. So if you have information maybe from other systems, or files that you're getting maybe from like a Benevity or some kind of other giving platform, you can actually use any of these templates here to push that information into Virtuous through this gift and contact import tool. You'll also be able to use the same process here to do any kind of manual entry, right? So if you are entering any gifts, I would just come in here, create a brand new one. Again, it's still going to have that word import, but essentially will be like your batch, right? You can enter your gifts manually here. You even have the option to set some defaults here. So that if you have like your checks, for example, I mentioned, you can just select checks as that gift type there. So that way you're not having to redo everything kind of every time. It can save you a couple clicks there as you're doing that gift entry there, but also minimizes error, right? So if you have some of those defaults that are preset here, you're not kind of at that risk of miskeying that information, of miskeying the date. You can preset that information so that it all goes in standard and the same. And then you're also going to be able to see here anything coming through any of our integrated forms. So in Virtuous, we're much more than that CRM platform, right? We're a fully integrated marketing platform. We have giving platforms as well. So then any of that information coming through any of those forms, so like a giving form, will be bundled for you here. So every morning when you come in, the next day, you're going to see everything that has come in from the previous day here as that bundle, right? So why is this important, right? Why do we have this kind of checkpoint here when it comes to our data, right? So again, we want to make sure that data is coming in clean, right? The core of our responsive framework is that we're able to make those connections with donors, right? Making sure that we're connecting with the right people, and that you're not necessarily sending someone, an email 7 times because they decided to actually register for your event, with 7 different emails, right? So depending on that information is how you're able to actually make those connections, right? So in Virtuous, again, we have that proactive approach. Before anything actually makes it into your system, we're actually going to be looking across your database, right? Trying to match to see if we can find any records that match that data coming in, for that new data, right? So we're going to be looking across your name, your address, your phone number, and your email, right? So I was just on that data readiness session a few minutes ago, and they called that NAPE, right? So those are those important kind of key data points there that we're going to be looking to see if we can match across any of them. So that way, if someone does use a different email, it's not going to automatically create a new record for you. It's going to flag it for you here. So again, as that data is coming over, so let's pretend, we have that information coming in over from our giving platform from the night before. You're going to open up this bundle here. And first thing you're going to notice is there are going to be 3 different buckets for you here at the bottom, right? So essentially, overnight, we did that kind of logic matching and trying to find those matches for you in Virtuous. And then we're going to bucket that information into those 3 categories. First bucket here is match needed. In this case, Virtuous thinks that it would try to find a match for you, and it thinks that it couldn't find a match for you, and it's going to ask you to actually create a new record here, right? So you can go into each of these directly here and see the information coming over on the left, kind of the new information. And on the right will be any of those matches on the Virtuous side, right? So I can actually create Wilma Flintstone right here, right? So essentially allowing you to do multiple things in this tool. You can actually create the record, but also process the gift at the same time. Or if you didn't want to go through each one, right? Maybe you had a big response for your Giving Tuesday campaign. You had a lot of new donors that came through. You don't have to go into each one here. You can just come into actions and create all new contacts, all at the same time. So allowing you to be more efficient there if you wanted to actually process a good amount of records at the same time. Then we have that last bucket here ready for import, right? That's exactly what it means, right? In that case, we did find a match for your record. There were no changes to that record. It's ready to go and ready for import. So it's going to move it into that green button. You don't really have to spend a lot of time there, right? So really the only place you're going to have to be spending time is in this middle bucket here, that update needed, right? And certainly my favorite bucket, right? Because this is where it thinks it found a match for you, but there's some differences in the data, right? It wants you to confirm that information before actually moving it over into Virtuous. So a couple examples here with Lisa and Ken Moore. So right when you come in, you can see really quickly in that bright orange, it's flagging for you what that change is, right? So you're not going to be coming in here and trying to figure out what that change is. It will highlight that for you. But right from here, I can actually ignore that change. I can add it to the record, or I can add it as a primary email to the record, right? So again, not only allowing you to create those records in here, but you're also able to process all that biographical information as well as here. I know when I worked at my nonprofit, we literally had two different people that were kind of working through this because it just took so long to do, right? We had one person doing all the biographical updates first and then doing the gift processing, right? But here you can do it all at the same time. So saving you a lot of steps, but also making it a lot more efficient and allowing your staff to do other more important things like connecting with those donors, right? A couple other examples is that it'll also look for things like name variations, right? Maybe in this case, when Michael Evans was signing up, or making that new gift, he entered his name there as Mike, right? So instead of creating that duplicate just because he used his nickname, we could also find that match for him, right? Because we're searching across all those different data points, being able to match across his address, his phone number, but essentially allowing you to kind of catch that change and add it to the record without creating those duplicates for you. So essentially through here in the gift and contact import, that's really the main goal, right? Is that not only are you going to be having clean data, but then you're also going to be able to process that information all through here in kind of one easy step, right? So another example here with Patsy and Jordan Harper, they have a brand new address. I can also add that address here, add it as a primary, or ignore that address through here as well. So again, really easy for you to do that when you're kind of working through Virtuous, but essentially, again, allowing you to really run a lot of those automations, right? We have automations in Virtuous that allow you to actually reach out to donors, make kind of create that engagement, build relationships with them. So this way you can be confident that that data is correct and accurate, right? So that's kind of that front end approach, right? So really through here is really where we want all data to be coming through in order to make it easy for you to only learn one process, but make sure that data is clean.
Lisbeth, before we hop in, we had a couple of good questions that I thought would be really helpful to kind of walk through. Yeah. The first is, do you have suggestions on what kinds of data points work better as tags and as organization groups? So when we think about what would we store as a tag and what would we store as an organization group?
Yeah, those are great questions. So I'm just going to hop back into my contact record just to show you a couple of things. So a good use of an organization group would be something like a portfolio, right? So if you're working with an assigned group of donors or you're responsible for kind of fundraising from a certain group, you can create that group in Virtuous and assign someone as kind of the owner of that group, but then they can manage that portfolio. So that's a really easy way to use the organization groups. Another way is maybe you have like board members, for example. Maybe you have some board members that are helping to actually raise funds or work with certain prospects or donors in your system. You can create an org group for them and then kind of attach those people to them. But what's great about the org groups, you can actually restrict their permissions as well. So board members, as they're logging in, would only need to see those maybe 10 donors that they're working with versus having access to your entire database. So those are some good ways to use that organization group. And then with the tags, right? So Again, the tags is really that way that you're defining who they are. So typically we could use them for things like communication preferences. So again, those do not calls, right? Do not email, any of those kind of solicit codes that you might be tracking, but also any other interests, right? So if you have certain programs or interest maybe in your nonprofit, you can actually isolate those out here. So things like nutrition and education, right? Or like youth development, or maybe they're interested even in planned giving, right? They show some interest on that planned giving side. You can track all that kind of interest information here as well, along with like maybe their different constituencies, right? So are they one of your alums? Are they a patient in your, at the hospital? Are they one of your volunteers? Really being able to track that constituency of who they are and how they're related to the org through that tagging. So really a lot of options when it comes to those tags. You're able to customize all these tags on your own. So really whatever that important information that you need to know about who they are and how to speak to them is how you would kind of use that tagging there.
Yeah, I like to think about it as organization groups are ways that I want to either be able to restrict the database down, or even I want somebody to automatically be assigned into a segment in that sense. So like, because you can attach, if we think about like missionary orgs or kind of membership opportunities, being able to say like, hey, this is their organization group, but they also manage this project or this fund where that money is designated. We have some logic that automatically assigns people into those organization groups to not have to keep them up to date. One of the things I do want to call out that we talk about is, you can have those organization groups and they are kind of just ways to group people together. You don't have to assign somebody to an organization group. So like Lisbeth here says Lisbeth's major gift portfolio. Lisbeth is not, her user in Virtuous is not actually assigned to that portfolio herself, but it is a great way to be able to manage that portfolio, to be able to see, I want to be able to just restrict and to be able to see, one, as a frontline fundraiser, we want to be able to have that access information to us quick, right? I want to be able to look at this screen and know exactly where somebody falls. So that's another good reason if you want to use a org group is for that visual, right? That visual is right there at the top. It's available for everybody to quickly be able to see that. They don't have to kind of go down and then scan through a tagging functionality again. So just thinking about some different ways of why we would use that org group versus that tag functionality. Also versus a custom field on an individual, right? We want to make sure org groups and tags are contact based inside of Virtuous. So we have a contact, which when we think about that structure, contact is an overarching kind of umbrella. And we have individuals underneath that umbrella, underneath that contact. So when we think about solicit codes, as Lisbeth talked about, right, we want to make sure those solicit codes hold themselves on the same right places. No mail, I don't want to mail to the address. That's at the contact level. But if Kayla says, don't ever call me, but my husband, Zach, is totally fine with that. Again, we want to make sure that we're holding data in the right place. So again, a really great way to be able to think about some of those different options when we think about there as well. A couple of questions, how can we like turn off specific things? I know we have a ton of customers in this session, so I love that. A couple of things I want to call out there. So Virtuous has some system tags that we have called out as lapsed or pre-lapsed. Our lapsed tag is going to be anybody who hasn't given in 13 months or is behind on a payment, say a recurring gift or a pledge. And then pre-lapsed is anybody who hasn't given in 6 to 12 months. And that really comes down to our theology of responsive fundraising, right? So when we think about what does it mean to be responsive, how are we making sure we're always connecting and we're not letting somebody fall through the cracks? That's where that kind of comes from. And so those can't be turned off, but you can create your own options if you want. If you don't like those definitions, you can create your own automations to be able to pull those tags and that functionality in there. A couple of different call outs here is this idea of what is kind of AI technology is Virtuous using to kind of employ some of this. So as Lisbeth mentioned, we have some algorithms running as data comes into the system to match appropriately to look at that. I think one of the things you were calling out, Andrew, is that some of the information that's coming in from our social insights piece might not be correct. And so how do we make sure that can we turn that on and off? Yes, you can turn on and off social insights. That's a conversation you can have with your account manager of if it's pulling in bad data. That is hard for us to think about when we are looking at using our partner Full Contact. It's their data that we want to pull in and bring in as much information as we possibly can for you to be able to kind of engage with that. And so definitely, if it's something that you don't want to pull in, we can definitely have that conversation. You can just connect with your account manager there as well. A couple of other call outs that we're looking at here. I can't keep up. Lisbeth, if you want to kind of keep starting, I'm going to go through these questions, see if I can answer. If not, I'll come back and interrupt you again.
Yeah, I'll be looking for you to pop in.
Perfect.
Awesome. Great questions. I'm so happy we're having good, robust kind of engagement here. So appreciate that from everybody. But so then we'll move into kind of the other side, right? So we already talked about a little bit about contact records. We talked about how data makes it in. And now I wanted to kind of switch over into our data health tools, right? So we do have a full suite of data health tools in Virtuous that allow you to continue to kind of clean that data up, make sure that you're deduping records, you have clean addresses. So over here, kind of in our data health tools is where you'll find kind of those different buckets here. So we do have that duplicate merging tool here, where you're able to actually, run a search to actually find duplicates in your system. Again, it's going to look across those same different data points. So their name, their address, their phone, and their email. You also can do some cleanup kind of in bulk as well. So you can kind of work through the tool here, but you also can do some bulk merging of contacts and bulk ignoring as well. So there's some flexibility there to help you kind of work through, make sure that you have clean records as well. So it'll create this list for you here when it comes to that duplicate matching when you run that search. If I go into any of these here, for example, it'll pull in, I have a record here for Ann and Albert Sample, and it'll pull in their contact information, but then it also pulled in a record here for Ann Rosen, right? So kind of looking at that data there, it kind of looks like it's a similar address, probably maybe like a maiden name situation, or someone with a different kind of name, right? So if I go ahead and hit on that compare button, you can see in that view, but it also can give you the side-by-side window, right? So making it really easy for you to see the records that are here. I can click into any of these records by clicking on that hyperlink if I wanted to dig in and kind of review the information a little bit more. But then you can just really easily select what record is it going into, right? Do you want to keep this record? Or do you want to keep this record? And then what data are you going to actually have coming over? So being able to actually check off and check on what information you want to merge, and then being able to do those merges all from within here. So really allowing you to kind of work through this list, maybe after your migration or kind of something like that, you had a lot of duplicates in your previous system, and that information kind of came over into Virtuous. So you can actually use this tool to do a lot of that cleanup kind of post-migration as well. I'm also able to run address health checks, right? So you can come into the address area here. I can click on run address data health. It'll again search all the addresses in your system and populate here, any that have any issues, right? So it can be some that haven't been kind of been able to be verified or validated here, right? So might not be, have been entered correctly, allows you to kind of confirm that information. I can go ahead and mark it as it is, maybe just one of those that doesn't actually validate. I can use it as is, or I can go ahead and make that update here, either fix it, delete it, or ignore it, right? So again, giving you a lot of efficiency. You don't have to go back out into the record to do that. You can actually update the address right here. Anything like, missing addresses, like if you're missing a zip code or you're missing like a city, will also populate through that address information here. Same thing with phone numbers. So you can have, clean phone numbers. If you have any that are improperly formatted, they will also be populated for you here. Again, you can clean them up directly from here. And then we have that email addresses, right? I don't have any data there because I'm in a sandbox, so I can actually send emails from here. But essentially, when an email has bounced 3 times, again, we have that fully integrated marketing tool So that information, once it's bounced 3 times, will actually push that email for you here as well. So again, you have full visibility kind of as that information is coming over, whether it's, you might not have a good address for them, or maybe you have something written incorrectly in their email, but giving you that visibility here through that email addresses data health tool to do that cleaning for you here. So really, those data health tools are kind of meant for you to proactively kind of go in here, check your information to make sure it's accurate, make sure that you can contact your donors, right? Making sure you have the correct addresses, phone numbers are entered correctly, and then you have some good emails there. All right, yeah, so that's kind of our data health tools, right? Really helping you to do that cleanup kind of after the fact to make sure that you have that information correct, right? So also wanted to show you a little bit about our query tool, right? So the query tool is really helpful, right? When you're trying to look at your data, right? So you want to be able to pull reports and lists of certain people, certain records, any certain tags, and be able to look to see what that data looks like, right? So, with our query tool here, you do have the ability to do that, right? You can create queries across all the different objects in Virtuous, right? So at the contact level, some gift queries. You can look at even like things like email information and event attendee information. So a lot of different ways that you can access your data to see what it looks like, right? And within some of the queries here, our contacts and our gifts query will actually allow you to make bulk changes through here as well. So even if you're getting started with queries, we do have some best practice queries that are already built in here. I know Kieran had mentioned in our whoever was in that data readiness session that was actually really great. He was talking about being able to pull things like LIBOR lists, right? That's an important kind of way of being able to look at some data. Who are those donors that haven't lapsed? Do you have good addresses for them? Do you have emails for them? Do you have phone numbers for them? So being able to isolate that there. So that's actually one of our best practice queries already. So you don't even need to know how to build that. You just click on that query. It'll already have the criteria built in there, and then I can go ahead and view those results. And then from here, again, any of the contact queries, I can actually do bulk actions as well. So let's say in here, I wanted to be able to, add them all to an email list. I can do that. I can add them to a queue, right? That allows me to kind of park them in that kind of a holding area for me to work on them later, right? I can add notes and tags to the records, things like tasks. If I wanted to prompt, staff members to make a phone call, right? Maybe this LIBOR list, I want to actually, ping my gift officer to make a phone call to all these 96 contacts. Right from here, I can add that task, right? I can actually assign it to me or someone else in the organization to make that phone call. So instead of you having to download this into Excel spreadsheet and actually email your gift officer or provide them that list, it can all just happen automatically through Virtuous here. I'm also able to make changes through our gifts. So if you have, you can run gift queries. And if you have things like maybe you miskeyed the project, right? You want to go ahead and update all the gifts I entered today to change that project. You can do that kind of bulk changing through here as well. You also have the ability to do bulk changes through our bulk data tools, right? So if you go over into our settings and then into the bulk data tools, you also have this whole kind of import functionality here. So if you click on all here, you'd be able to see kind of all the data that you can add, right? So brand new here, I can add things like contacts. I can create tags from here. I can add relationships, a lot of things that I can do in bulk through that import tool here as well. You can also use some of the imports here to update records, right? So if I click on that update tab here, it'll just kind of filter down for me all those that you can use to update, right? So if I have a set of contacts in my system, I want to export all the data out. I want to clean it up in Excel, and then I want to push that data back in. It's really easy to do that through our bulk data tool. So really important to kind of look at that update function here and see kind of all the options that you have when it comes to updating, including contacts, gifts information, and then some organizational data as well, like custom field data. So again, you don't necessarily have to go in one by one to do all these changes, review all these records to make sure it's clean. The system can do a lot of that for you through our bulk data tools. And then lastly, you're going to hop into automations, right? So automations, certainly my favorite part in Virtuous, right? When I spent 16 years in the world of nonprofits, and when I saw the automation workflows in Virtuous, is really what made me fall in love with the platform and why I came to work here, right? So essentially, automations in Virtuous are workflows, right? Where you can do external type workflow that are multi-channel, where you're building relationship, engagement with your donors, right? Without having to kind of do one-to-one outreach, you can make all your donors kind of feel that they're getting that major gift, kind of white glove experience through our automations. But you also can do automations workflows that are internal, right? So thinking about like, how can I actually leverage this information and kind of this workflow here to be able to, update my system, make sure that everything is correct, right? Sorry, so I see you there, Kayla.
Well, I'm just ready to talk about this because this is my absolute favorite part about Virtuous. So I just need to hop in because I'm gonna,
Okay, perfect. Yeah,
jump in.
Add
Here we
in
are.
any comments. Yeah, I wasn't sure we had questions. Yeah, perfect. So automations, right? So those external ones, as you're thinking about getting started, we already have some best practice templates that are already built into Virtuous, right? So there are 9 best practice templates in here. So you can take more of a crawl, walk, and run approach, right? You can get started with one of these templates. Maybe you just tweak them, make them your own, and then kind of build onto those, right? So you can have automations around birthday celebrations, donor retention, doing event follow-up through our automations, even looking at things like volunteer milestones. And we have some volunteers and you want to be celebrating, after a certain amount of hours that they're hitting their volunteer hours. Again, you're not necessarily having to run a query to find people as they're hitting these milestones. The system can do all this for you behind the scenes. So really, when I think about kind of reporting in Virtuous and list polls, I always think of like, why do you want to do that, right? What do you need the report for? What do you need the list for? A lot of those things can be handled through automations, right? So a great example of how you can keep your data clean is just doing your donor segmentation, right? Through automation, right? So, thinking about like, the different donors that are in your system and being able to actually bucket them into the different kind of donor types, right? So these automations here are all being fueled by queries. So you only have to set them up once, right? Gonna set it and forget it, right? You're gonna create those queries, create those steps. It's gonna run for you in the background kind of every day and and move people in and out of the workflows as needed, right? So in this case here, I have some segmenting in my database that I wanna do kind of across those donor types. So I wanna be able to segment out all my non-donors, right? I can build a query, just identifies who those non-donors are, and then have the system actually add that tag for me of non-donor, right? So doing that segmentation right here, again, no one's running a query, no one's having to globally add or change records or waiting, right, until end of month, until, someone like me, the DBA had time to be able to do that, right? Sometimes there was a delay in being able to do some of that segmenting. So this can all happen in kind of that donor's timing here. So now, you're going to look at donors who are that kind of entry-level donor. Same thing. You're going to have that query attached there. You're going to add that tag of entry-level donor. But what I love is I can actually remove the tag of non-donor, right? So completely hands-off experience. That way, again, if you're running any kind of communication for your entry-level donors or your mid-level donors or your major donors, you're not having to worry that they're going to be in the wrong bucket, right? Because the system's going to be putting them into the correct buckets automatically through these automations, right? I know that for when I worked in my higher ed institution, we used to do segmentation. I think we had like 30 segments, right? We used to segment across donor types, but also across the different colleges that they were, a part of, right? So it would take me forever to run that segmentation. I would have to run tons of queries. I would dump it onto Excel and kind of do a lot of slicing and dicing in Excel, then have to push it back into my system. All that can be done right here through this automation. So when you're ready to pull a list, you can just pull based on those tags and already have that segmentation done. So no need to kind of do all that kind of work in the background, right? Another example, right, is just looking at like giving milestones, right, or like giving societies, right? So I know at my hospital, we used to actually have just different tiers when it came to our giving societies there. So again, the system, you can set it up and forget it, build a query and kind of attach people into these different kind of buckets here, right? So this is my example that I built here, kind of looking at that $5,000 level as kind of my bronze society. But again, you can set whatever criteria you want, whatever that threshold is for you, because you're building that query and those definitions for these automations, right? So in this case, I actually want my record when they hit that threshold to get that tag added. So I know they're part of that bronze society there. Again, if anyone goes into the record, there's no delay in being able to see that. Also being able to have an email going out directly from here, right? So making that connection and engagement, letting that donor know that they're heard, that you can see that they made that gift, making them feel appreciated and you're paying attention, right, to their behavior. You can have a combination here of internal and external kind of touch points, right? So I also want my donors to get a handwritten note from my development director, right? I can actually prompt my gift officer right from the automation to make that handwritten note, right? So it doesn't necessarily all have to be through those automated touch points. It can also include those one-to-one touch points, right? I also want that follow-up phone call as kind of that touch point there for those society, right? Now that maybe they're going into a different level and you're going to want the same thing, you're going to remove that bronze tag. I'm going to add that silver tag, but I can then build in that engagement through, again, maybe a different email speaking more to them as more of that $10,000 donor. In this case, maybe I still want that phone call from my development officer, but maybe now I want my CEO to write a thank you note, right? They're kind of moving up that pipeline. I want to be able to have that information there. And then same thing with that gold, right? A similar experience. You're going to remove those tags, but then you could even add them to a portfolio, right? So right through here, adding them to one of those organization groups and attaching them through the automation. I can even add notes to the record. So maybe in this case, when they hit that 25,000 level, I want to make sure there's an important note right when they log in and anyone goes in there kind of letting them know that this is kind of one of your Gold Society members and they should talk to their kind of assigned gift officer or your CEO before kind of reaching out to them. So you can add things like notes through here and again, do that prompting of that task, right? But essentially, this would have been a lot of work, right? I would have had to have run these queries. I would have had to have a process to add the tags. I had to have the process to create the emails. I had to prompt my gift officers to make those phone calls. I had to add them into a portfolio, adding notes, but all that is being handled by the automation. So again, you're having that clean data. You have people segmented in the buckets that they need to be in, but no one's having to do that extra work for you.
I'm happy to add some examples of some like a lovely automations I'd have been running. Automations I would have been running at the same time are, we had, I came from an RE shop. I'm just going to be honest. That's where I worked. We used Razor's Edge. And we had multiple different types of constituencies, right? And somebody could fall into most, but then we had a primary one, right? All of that opportunity that could have been automatically being added and updated through automation. So being able to say, great, our top constituency was trustee. Well, as soon as I add trustee onto a contact record, I'm now going to add that as one of the options as all of our constituencies. But then I'd like a tag, but then I also want now to see my primary option. The system can automatically update that. So the same way of saying, were they a friend and now they're a donor? I worked in higher ed, so they were a donor, but now they're an alum, right? Being able to automatically kind of track and see that information. Again, I don't have to go in there and add that information. The system's going to do it for me. And so saving me time, like all of those small things, like just how do we keep that opportunity there? A couple of the other things we talked about was some of the questions were, well, could I have an organization group and a tag be on the record at the same time? If you want it visually top and center for an organization group, but you want to be able to work with tags in other ways, great, no problem. Again, have an automation running to keep those two in sync, right? How can we have the system, if I'm running some processes all the time to keep my data clean, or even one of the things that I had to do every week was I had to run a report to tell all of my major gift officers, hey, you haven't talked to somebody in 90 days, right? Have the system automatically assign them a task. I no longer have to send them an email or send them a report or bother them or do those things, right? I'm no longer the bad guy. The system is the one that keeps bothering them and telling them that they need to do their job, right? So how do we make sure that we can have some of those small things automatically happening? So if we think about that idea of like, if we want to create these groups of people so I can segment them and use them for maybe email lists or event participation, right? How do we make sure that we can do that? That's really where automation comes into play, being able to look at a certain piece of data in the system, whether it be a custom field or a custom collection or those types of things, right? I've added in this new piece of data, a form was submitted, or somebody gave a gift to a specific project. Those are the types of things that now I want to make sure that every time I go into the database, I can pull a list that's accurate and up to date. That is what internal automation does. I can set up my parameters every day, and it's running nightly. It's keeping that information up to date for me, so I don't have to go in and do it myself. I think I've actually demoed quite a few of you on here, so you probably have heard my anecdote about just my direct mail segmentation, right? In Razor's Edge, it took me 2 weeks to pull one direct mail because we had like 74 segments.
Mm-hmm.
It was a lot of segments. But really specific, right? That's what we want to do. We want to talk to somebody as a parent of a current student who gave 2 years ago, right? Really specific information. And so it would take me 2 weeks. In Virtuous, those segments would be running every single day, right? I am no longer spending 2 weeks of my life having to segment my data. The system is doing it for me every day, and I can come in and now I've saved 2 weeks of work to be able to now continue to do this, right? Like that is the mind-blowing idea of like when I think about just the amount of time I wasted that like a system could have been helping me do my job, like hence why I'm here at Virtuous now, like why I'm here, like helping others find the light, right? Like that's it. Great question, Stephanie. Can you pretty much all of it? We can definitely get some options over to your CSM for sure. Write down your information. We are at time. For sure. But this is, this kind of conversation of how do we keep our data clean? What is it? This is the type of conversation that we want to have with our partners and be able to say like, hey, like, what are your current processes that you're running today? And like, these are the types of conversations that if you are a current customer, please feel free to connect with your CSM to be able to say like, hey, like I have this weird process and I don't know if it's something that could actually work in automation. Like these are the kinds of conversations we want to make sure that you feel, helped by, like, so that you can spend your time doing more meaningful work instead of that menial work. Okay. So, I really, really appreciate you all, coming today. We'll be here all week, y'all. So come back to the product stage if you want to see more different information about Virtuous and how to use it. Or please just enjoy the rest of the summit. There are so many great sessions that are going to be hosted, and I know it will be really, really fruitful for all of you. So again, thanks y'all for coming. Go take a break, stretch, get some coffee, get a soda, and come on back for the next session. Bye, y'all.